Welcome back to the Monkey Mind Lab. Today we have with us Professor Dana Yeaton, Associate Professor of Theatre at Middlebury College and a distinguished playwright and educator. A Middlebury alumnus, Dana has significantly influenced the stage and the classroom. His acclaimed works include Mad River Rising, which earned the Moss Hart Award, and Helen at Risk, a recipient of the Heidemann Award. His musical Swing State was featured at the New York Musical Theatre Festival. Yeaton's plays often explore depths of everyday life, blending humor and poignancy to reveal profound human experiences. Beyond playwriting, Dana is a passionate advocate for the art of the spoken word. In 2014, he founded Oratory Now, a student-driven initiative at Middlebury that has trained over 7,000 students in effective public speaking. Through workshops, peer coaching, and campus-wide events, Oratory Now empowers students to communicate their ideas with clarity and confidence. Please join me in welcoming Professor Dana Yeaton.
Well, hello, Abir. Thanks for having me.
Let's begin with the first set of questions that we usually ask everyone. What is it that you do? What got you into it? And why do you do it?
Well, you've touched on it. I was a poet in school, a wannabe poet, found that playwriting was a better fit, and devoted, I'll say, the rest of my life to it, but because playwrights need something else to do. That became teaching, that other thing. And somehow that led me to what I think of as a spin-off from playwriting, another element of it, which makes a fair amount of sense, right? We're still standing in front of an audience when we're doing oratory. We're still wondering what will keep people's attention. We're still trying to make a change, make something happen in a live situation. But those two things have continued to interweave and amaze me. And the teaching of it, can't imagine needing to teach the same thing over and over. Nominally, I have. It's playwriting or speaking, but those change for every single student. So I've never had to read the same play twice from two different writers. I've never heard the same speech twice from two different speakers. So the subject matter changes. And that's what keeps me on my learning edge and keeps me excited.
That sounds really fun.
What did I leave out? Did you ask a question beyond what do I do? Why do I do it? Well, maybe I've covered it. When I looked around at the world of poetry, still thinking that was my chosen field, and back then I was a kind of parody of a student, meaning I was actually smoking a pipe and drinking tea. Like I really wanted to be an intellectual and a poet. I'm not saying other people were doing that, but I wore different colored socks, and I was just trying to become a human with a brand. I just felt like, no, I don't really fit in. And the beauty of the words is not enough for me. I want change. I want things to happen as a result of the words that I craft. And I started to get suspicious of words, feeling like they were sort of seducing me to say things that I maybe didn't yet mean. The breakthrough then would have been, in a way, looking back and seeing how many of my poems were actually monologues, were actually in the voices of people, not me, and how that freed me up. I did a few solo plays and performed them, and that was a great lesson in why I shouldn't be on the stage, ultimately. So the part of writing that is I deliver something and then disappear and other people present it has always appealed to me. The part of that is necessarily collaborative excites me. It takes you out of the solo sadness of writing and puts you in the world, even if you're sitting there thinking about that next phase and imagining that audience. So I find that kind of irresistible because it means, well, I'll give you the analogy. I was walking across campus the other day and a kid came up and said, I want to give you this camera. What would you call it? A real camera, but a plastic one, right? One of these.
A disposable camera.
A disposable camera. And he says, I just want you to take a bunch of pictures and I'll develop them. And I walk away and suddenly the campus is not the same campus anymore because I'm looking through the lens, the imaginary lens of the camera. And when you're a writer, in a way, that's what the world does. It turns into not potential material, but you're just paying attention in a way. It's a lens I'm addicted to. So maybe that's the answer to why I do it. It's a way of being alive and being maybe a little extra alive.
That's a beautiful analogy. Okay, it's time for the big question of the day.
Okay.
So, from what I understand, you're a big advocate of oratory. I'm one of the coaches myself. So here it is. Is oratory the liberal art that will save the liberal arts and balance the budget, is it?
That's my claim. I'm trying to make a big, perhaps an overly large claim, and then see if I can support it.
Okay.
And I should explain, I'm in the mood for this because you may or may not know that 3 weeks from now, I will teach my last class, and I will walk from that class to a lecture hall and give my first faculty lecture.
Okay.
And it will be, to some extent, on this topic. I might hype it as my secret plan to save liberal arts and the college all in one. But I am serious about the role that training people to stand in front of each other and speak their truth can have, the catalytic effect that can have both on the speaker and the audience. And whenever I bring up that I do these things, perhaps somebody on an airplane or something, they're like, the moment I mention speaking, they will come out with their relationship, and normally their difficult, tortured relationship with speaking. And it's a very vulnerable spot for so many people. And I find that telling, and I find it concerning, because I think what that means is, though we're willing to share our opinions in lots of different circumstances, when we have to literally stand in front of others, all eyes on us, we suddenly shrink in that light. We lose our sense of self, and we fall back on, I don't know, earlier versions of ourselves, smaller versions of ourselves. We fall back on jargon and vocabulary and perhaps the discipline we're speaking in, so we can hide ourselves behind speaking it properly with a level of objectivity that exonerates us from what we are about to say or what we're failing to say. So that means what all those problems add up to is an enormous opportunity. And when I found out how I felt about oratory, it was just speeches that I'd heard before that would make me cry. And I'm sort of like, what's wrong with me? Why is the timbre of this voice still doing this to me? It's got my nervous system, it's got my number. What's that about? When I decided to teach a first year seminar, it was like, damn it, I'm not going to do playwriting. I don't want to do creative writing with new writers because I feel like that's too rarefied in a way. I want to help people write better. And the fastest way I know how to do that is by helping them speak before writing, speak as part of developing the writing. And that's when I put the pieces together. And what if we study speeches in order to analyze and ultimately deliver our own? What are the principles behind this, and can we apply them?
And correct me if I'm wrong, writing meant for reading versus writing meant for speaking is very different.
Ideally.
And it takes a lot for people to make that switch, to be able to write to speak.
Isn't that odd that what we do all day is the hard part when we do it in front of others? Yeah. So we're used to writing. We're used to sharing our thoughts that way. It's not maybe our favorite thing to do, but we've learned to do it. We've been schooled in it. We spent many, many hours doing it. And while I appreciate all the work that goes into that, I wouldn't take a minute away from the schooling that we get in writing and in reading. That, I think, tips the scales too far towards an artificial voice that we develop that is the voice we use when we write. So many people who struggle with writing, it's because, as I imagine it, they think it needs to be better than they are. They think it needs to represent them in a certain way. They think there's a protocol that must be observed, and it's not their way, so they become artificial. In that first class that I taught, I think it was 2011, I had a student who was struggling to write, really whip-smart kid from upstate New York. And he would talk, and he would describe what he was trying to do. Or first of all, he would come in with a draft, unintelligible. I didn't know where to start. So I kind of put my hand on his and said, just tell me, what's this about? A few moments later, I pull out, this is a dirty trick, maybe illegal. I pull out my recording device and I play for him what he just said. And I watch his eyes light up because he's hearing his first paragraph. He's hearing what he meant, but he couldn't say it when he was trying to write. But when he was telling me, just telling me, it was perfectly cogent. It was all it needed to be. So a lot of what I thought first-year writers needed was just calm down. Don't try to write like someone else. Try to think. Try to think out loud. Try to think out loud with a group of people who are doing the same thing and compare notes on what works and what's difficult and how did you get over that. And I thought we had really good results. I thought people, when I went to their writing and talked to them about it as if it were spoken, looking for that clarity, trying to talk them down from all the adjectives and the SAT words that had gotten them here, then I think they started to sense, oh, this isn't what I thought it was. I'm not trying to be smarter than I am. I'm not trying to convince you that I'm not writing only to convince you that I understood. I'm writing to show you what my experience was, which takes them out of the role of writing something, the only purpose of which could ever be for a grade, to please a teacher, and taking them to the place where it's like, maybe there's something in this for me. Maybe I had an experience worth sharing in relation to this material that we're looking at, often in relation to a speech we were hearing. When oratory kicked in, it was obvious that the key to that particular angle, to helping students do it on a scale, was to have students doing the coaching. So then the challenge, and I still love it, was how will we help someone help someone? Now we've got to really essentialize these skills. What is at the bottom of this? Because if you're not crystal clear, it's going to get distorted as it goes out. Not everybody can do what a director does and stand there and come up with the perfect comment that helps someone find their intention. Many of us just want to say, could you say it slower? Could you speak up? And the principle that a theater director would use wouldn't be correction. It certainly wouldn't be, let me say it the way you should say it, right? The line reading. So some of those concepts from the rehearsal room, basically all of those concepts from the rehearsal room, informed the curriculum that we developed in oratory now. What I've come to believe since then is that we need more and more opportunities to do that. So there are speaking competitions that we built, but most recently the first-year symposium. So this is how I get to my claim, right? So in 2018, there were 4 classes that met at the same time my first-year seminar met, and we decided to do a symposium to each other at the end. It was a positive psychology class, a class about Italy, places in Italy, and there was a Middle Eastern studies class, and my oratory class. So 0 in common, except here we were doing our first-year seminars. But the mere fact that we were going to present to each other changed the nature of what we were doing. Not the entire semester, but we knew we were working toward it. And in fact, one class we actually did together. But it just meant we've got to understand this at such a level that we can communicate it to somebody who didn't read the same books, who didn't look at the same maps, who doesn't have the same vocabulary.
And in an accessible way.
Called public scholarship. Look it up. So it is now expanded to where over the past 3 years, we ran a first-year symposium that more than half of the first-year seminars participated in. So we had, I remember the number, not from this last year, but the year before, 337 presenters. A lot of kids. More than half of the first-year class in the fall. They presented to each other a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes max. They might be group presentations. It might be the spring symposium for all students. It might be poster presentations. There was a performance at one point, some drumming and so on. But the idea is show what you know. And I'm a big proponent of that. I just feel like if instead of proving what you know by writing the paper, or better yet, in addition to writing the paper, you got to find a way to share that out. That is, that changes the dynamic. First of all, it makes you a first-year scholar. It puts you in a community and it shows you your community. I try to imagine what it's like to be a first-year student here. And what I'm told is the major thought coming in is, will I have friends? That forget education. It's social. Will I have friends? Well, the friends you meet, you might meet in class, but not many people talk about friendships founded in class. More often, extracurriculars. Well, what if, as you're doing your extracurriculars, as you're living your life, one of the ways in which you come to know other people is academically, is through the way their mind works when they're addressing a topic of interest to them. So that got me jazzed. And I started thinking that could be the organizing principle for a revision of the first-year seminar program, which will revolutionize education at Middlebury, unify it. And I haven't really figured this part out, but somehow it will balance the budget.
Okay.
Okay. Can I go on?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So right now we have what's called the college writing requirement. And among faculty, there's a fair amount of concern that some feel quite comfortable doing that, teaching writing. Others avoid it like the plague, and others go along with it, but just feel like this is not my best stuff. This is not me playing a home game. My subject matter, I love it. I can't wait to share it. And I'm willing to do the writing component, but not happily.
Yeah.
And then there are others who just refuse. They just won't. And I have some sympathy for that. I also have an argument against it, which is, yes, but you may not write, but you do communicate and you do show your work and you show it in certain ways that help people outside your field understand it. That's public scholarship. Let's do that. Let's all do that. So my thought is replace CW with public scholarship. There's a public scholarship requirement element to the first-year seminar. You can do it in a symposium context. You can do it in a podcast. You could do it with a museum exhibit. The goal or the challenge is to show your work outside. And what that would be doing is putting the liberal art of oratory to work, unifying the first-year seminar. What to me is even more exciting than that is that it would be using that liberal art that has been around since before the Greeks probably, but certainly since the ancient Greeks. It would be using one of the liberal arts to unite the liberal arts, to show the commonality of it. So I don't mean this, but I'll say it anyway. Just imagine that you take every title of every first-year seminar that's taught and you put "and the liberal arts" after it. So whatever that course is, what was your first-year seminar?
I took Fairy Tales of the World.
And the liberal arts. Okay? Growth and its limits and the liberal arts. So would they literally have to put "and the liberal arts" in? I don't think so, but I have two ways of thinking about it. Make connecting your subject matter to the liberal arts part of the mission of the first-year seminar. Or better, make it the challenge of each season of first-year seminars. Next fall, whatever's taught, each course will include a reflection on how this relates to the liberal art, how it is part of the interwoven network of disciplines that makes what we do here so valuable. We have to get people ready for jobs that don't exist yet. We have to create learners who don't leave here with their professional skills and knowledge base sufficient to what's going to be asked of them. It's just not possible. We don't know what you need to know, but we know some protocols, some disciplines, some capacities that would help you make whatever maneuver you need to make. So first year seminar and the liberal arts is my idea for how to reimagine the first year seminar program. Now, I believe that what happens in your first months here will have an outsized impact on the rest of your time here. If at the end of your first semester you feel like you have a sense of what other people are up to, you have a respect for the disciplines that you don't know anything about or know very little about, you've actually learned something from your peers. You know them as people who have been part of an experiment to see how they respond to the game Go, to growth and its limits, etc. And in that pursuit, what we've managed to do, and this may sound more mercenary than I want it to, is we've sold you on the model of education that you've bought into. We've tried to prove that the liberal arts is the most effective way to train someone, that grounding, that sense that I don't need to study something else to have an appreciation for its value. I do find other ways of learning and thinking attractive, and while I'm here, I want to visit them. I didn't go to business school. I came here. That's what I think could help the liberal arts earn its keep in a society that is increasingly questioning the value of the liberal arts, the value of higher education in general. What will replace us if we're not winning that argument? Professional schools, right? It will be that you just go into a slipstream learning to perform a certain job, regardless of the other skills that could help you do it at a higher level. So there's my monologue turned into a case that I want to make on my way out the door. I think of it as totally uncontroversial. I can't see any problem with it, and I don't know why it won't be immediately adapted.
So the obvious benefit to having students trained in oratory is, of course, in any job that one applies for or in any leadership position, communication is key. And when people start communicating with ums and ahs and buts and likes and all of that, it shows that they don't know their own thoughts. They're not being able to process it out well. Apart from the obvious benefits of being able to communicate effectively, because you have the future leaders of the world coming up from places like this, and of course my generation is going to take on the world and be responsible for it. Would you say that public speaking and oratory has a larger role to play in the education system itself, apart from the obvious benefits of communication skills?
Oh, you'll be shocked to hear my answer, yes. Think of it this way. We inhale what we read and what we hear. We exhale what we write and what we speak. And these modalities are connected. And that is how we learn, that there's an in and an out. So this particular skill, speaking, the corollary of writing, is not just a subject matter, but a way to learn. It's a capacity that allows us to internalize what's going on around us and to make use of it. It allows us to interact. Minus listening and speaking, we're not very effective. And we can't experience that thing that sustains us, social life, without it. So this is about as core as it gets. It is literally the breath, without which no human. So I started thinking it's not just good in those obvious ways. In what way is it also good, but perhaps not self-evidently? When you are speaking, the challenge is that you're doing it with your body in front of other people. If you could just send the message, it would be much less anxiety-inducing. We all know this. It's being there physically, especially standing, your whole body exposed. So how does one get over that? Well, for one thing, you learn process anxiety. You learn to deal with anxiety, and you learn to maybe relabel it as, we like to say, as excitement. because it's that too.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
performance energy. And you
Especially
need it.
for actors and young performers going on stage right before your cue, you can just feel your heart going all over the place.
Athletes know all about
Yeah.
this, right? If you can't control or channel that wonderful adrenaline rush that you get and the kind of focus that you get, if you can't refocus under duress, you're not going to perform well in any pressure situation. So it's practice for that. But I was thinking of it this morning. If we want you to leave with something, where is that located? And I don't want it to just be in that small real estate of your cranium. I want it to be more lasting than that, in your whole body. You need it in your bones. You need this sense of yourself, which is that I can stand here and not feel awkward standing here. That's an enormous accomplishment. What that's telling your nervous system is, apparently, I deserve this attention that I'm about to get, that I'm getting. And I'm capable of riding the emotions that stir me, that come up involuntarily. Yup, there's that little fluttering in my stomach. Yup, there's the sweat that I didn't really particularly want. There's the crack in my voice. Just imagine the power of being able to ride all of that, to anticipate it even, and go, I'm okay with that. Because when you see that speaker in the front of the room riding that bronco, you are mesmerized. You relax. You go, if this person makes a mistake, we will not all die here. We're gonna be okay. This person isn't really, you know, that guitar player in the open mic who gets up there and goes clunk clunk and then says sorry, and everybody just goes, oh no, like you mistook this situation. You think this is about showing us how good you are, but we wanted to hear your song. You know, we wanted to enjoy this together, but you're not going to enjoy this because you're just not ready yet. You're not there yet. And I've certainly done that, right? I've certainly gotten up and apologized for myself. But what that tells you is you need some work. You need a different attitude towards what's happening when you're the front of the room. And I think a human out of that situation, right? Take yourself out of standing in front of the room. Now, let yourself sit across the table from someone. If you feel like this may not go exactly as I want, but I'm going to be okay. I'm not going to lose contact with this person. I'm going to keep connecting on the assumption that I really don't have to hide my lack of ability, because my ability is enough, right? So if you could leave college feeling like I went to college and learned how to feel better in my bones when it's my turn. And I also learned to listen better when it's not my turn, because that's my turn too, in a way. It's my turn to listen. And maybe I start to prize my ability to listen to three people speak and then say something that sums up the situation we're in a way that's helpful to that group. Pretty useful professionally, but just plain useful.
So that's interesting what you just said. It makes the monkey mind jump around. Knowing what to say and when to say it is very important, but also knowing when not to speak and when to stay silent is a very important thing. And being silent, or the power of silence, is something that's very important from a multitude of perspectives, but specifically from an oratory perspective.
I love that you've caught that part of it. If you think of speaking as the loud end of a spectrum, then silence is the other end of that spectrum. It's the absolute opposite, the silence. And your capacity along that entire range is your superpower. Being loud and not being able to also be quiet is leaving you without some really important tools. So what's happening at the front of the room, if you manage to calm the autonomic system, is that you are quieting the body, you're quieting the breath, And you're reassuring your nervous system that silence is actually safe. I don't have to talk to avoid what's going on. A teacher told me the other day about a student who reported, if I'm not overly busy, I get really anxious. Being busy all the time is how I avoid anxiety. And what I wanted to say is fascinating. And if I were your life coach, you might want to work on that over time and see and sit with what it feels like to not be active. Because silence is a kind of inactivity.
Yeah.
You're going mute. And what happens when you go mute? Where does your attention go? Does it go to the monkey mind, which for most of us it does? There's the chatter. Why can I not sleep so well at night? Because when I wake up, I either have something I want to think about or I have something I can't help but think about. And it's often many things at once and not particularly productive.
Yeah.
So gotcha on the monkey mind. And I think people flee, right? They're afraid of the monkey mind, or they don't recognize that that's what's taken over. And silence is a way of quieting the monkey.
And even in negotiations or communications, I think just staying silent sometimes has a lot more power than people realize. Even when I'm having an argument with my mom, for example, I know I've messed up when like we're hashing it out and she just goes silent and stares at me, and I was like, oh wow, I can feel my soul burning through my eyes.
Message received.
Message received. I got it.
Do you think when she does that, it's to send that message, or is it because she's waiting for something to come up for her that seems worthy of saying?
I think it's more of the former. I think it's just it's one of those things where take a minute to figure out your stuff there. I'll wait. I'm waiting for you. When you get to my level, we talk.
You remind me of something that happens a lot with young writers. In my class, my playwriting class, they read a play. And the longest thing they're going to have to write is a 500-word response where I ask them not to analyze the play, but to draw a lesson from the play that will help them be a better playwright, where they are challenged to speak at least half about their own play and half about the play they read. So they almost always just analyze the play. They forget to talk about their own play because that's what writing has been. And many of them will do it in one paragraph. Boom, 500 words, a block of text. So you mentioned silence, and to me, a paragraph separated by a blank line before the next paragraph is a kindness, is a silence. It's a declaration that I've completed a unit of thought. Let that sit for a moment. Perhaps I've managed to make it compelling enough that you're eager to read this next paragraph. But it's not the assumption, as it is with a big fat one-paragraph essay, that you're going to keep going regardless of whether or not I make it interesting. So then there's also within the rhythm of the paragraph, the stops, the commas, the shaping of the thought that's helping someone, in a sense, hear your voice as they read you. I asked ChatGPT. I gave it a compliment and it said, well, thank you. And I said, no, seriously, like, how do you do that? And it started breaking down what it had just done, because I was impressed by not just the clarity of its thought, but by its ability to really make a line that had a kind of singing element to it that was very attentive to rhythm and alliteration. And it said, this is what the large language models study, and we watch for pauses, meaning it understands the rhythm of language and the power of the pause, even in written language. And if you were to look at its analysis of what it's doing when it's trying to write well, when it's trying to write, I'll say creatively, but rhetorically, what you would see is it's learned every lesson that you kind of already know, and maybe some of which you follow, but we'd be better writers if we just did what chat is trying to do, because it's figured us out on that level.
Yep.
Spooky.
The other thing that comes along with oratory now is the importance of storytelling. And that's something I've always lived by. If somebody asks me, what do you want to do? Is I first and foremost tell them I'm a storyteller. My medium may change. It may be art, it may be poetry, it may be a podcast, it may be very different things. But one of my core principles in life is I'm a storyteller. And there is an evolutionary need for stories, I believe, in humans, something we studied in psychology, is that we're extremely fascinated by it. So what do you think the practical applications of that, and along with being an effective communicator, being an effective storyteller, is in today's day and age, especially when, the world is what it is and everybody could use a little story here and there?
Storytelling is the high-octane form of oratory. It's stealth oratory, because what it's doing is creating change without apparently being intended to create change, right? So the parable is maybe a more obvious example of it teaches you something. It gives you it helps you deliberate, maybe. It helps you understand something differently, but it uses a story to get you there. And I think that you talked about the evolutionary part of story, and I'm a big proponent of that. I agree that we sat around the fire at night and we needed to know what was safe and what was not safe. And we needed each other's company. But the narrative that we built around the day let us sleep or not. And if the story is not yet assembled, we don't sleep well. And our dreams will do it for us. So the undigested experience of the day becomes the food for the dream at night, and maybe the nightmare. Yeah. And then you get up the next day and you go live another unexamined day in the life, and then come back and share notes. It's like, what the hell was that? And what does it mean? And how do I fit in? Because we need the narrative container to hold ourselves. Otherwise, it just seems too unsafe out there. So we probably feel less anxiety on some level today because there aren't tigers, except there are, right? The tigers of our monkey minds, stalking us all day long, not leaving us alone. But, there's some people living through some real insecurity right now, more than normal.
Oh, yeah.
And that is the norm. That is the new norm. So what we're doing with a story that makes it the highest form of oratory in a way is we are creating an experience for the listener. We're not just informing them. We are grabbing their attention. We're taking them through a series of events that incorporate their curiosity and their life experience. At the best, and the Greeks had a name for this, enargeia, at the best, it's putting us there. You are there, is the idea. The well-told story ends up, and I walk up, and I open the door. I've gone into present tense now, and I look, and there, right? And we've slowed time, and we've created the visual image, and we've got motion, and we have everything zeroing in on, focusing their attention on this moment that we're about to reveal to them. And the structure of the story is how we structure their attention. So people are catching on to the attention economy. They're more aware now that that's what social media is playing to, is the currency of social media is your attention, the click, the scroll.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that makes it hard to sleep at night too, because it doesn't put your day together. It kind of introduces a whole, what's a group of monkeys called? Do you know this one? There's your homework.
Yeah.
Right. A something of monkeys, right? Yeah. And they're unleashed in your brain. I have a feeling we're about to find out. I wonder if it's a school. I like to think they're at school.
It's a troop.
A troop of
A
monkeys.
troop of monkeys.
Oh, I'm disappointed. There's a challenge. What's a better name? And what are those names called, by the way? There's a title for that title.
There's a barrel.
A barrel of monkeys. Exactly. Exactly. There's a barrel of monkeys in your brain.
Yeah.
That's much better than
That could be the spin-off for this. It's just like,
right.
We've gone from monkey mind to a barrel of monkeys.
Well, that's when you do a greatest hits.
Yeah.
It's the barrel of monkey minds. Yeah.
We bring back everybody who's been on the monkey mind and have like one big barrel of monkeys reunion. Yeah.
I love that you call it a lab. I like your graphic. Congratulations. And I'm excited to see what you find out when you go around asking people questions.
Thank you. I'm excited too.
Yeah.
We usually end the episode on a big note. So if you'd like to make a claim or like some sort of advice for people on like go through life, improvising life or something, I don't know. Or something on
I don't know if this is big, but here's what's been on my mind recently. There's this hack that is so easy and so powerful, which is that we spend much of our life, and your title sort of alludes to this, feeling a division between mind and body and a competition. And I have a feeling that a college student maybe thinks of themselves as a mind goes to college and gets its training, but the body is just sort of, the passenger or the vehicle to carry them around. But what I've learned through this practice called Yoga Nidra that just blows my mind is the moment the mind thinks about the body, the two come into sync, and both of them are calmed and quieted and strengthened. And you give yourself resilience just by allowing yourself to focus on what am I actually feeling? And you might tell yourself, what am I feeling on the bottoms of my feet right now? And then what you notice is and what you notice is changing you, because the sensation on the bottom of your feet was there, but you weren't noticing it.
Yeah.
So the act of noticing something to do with your body is a simple practice that, to me, signals so much more. Because in order to function, we often have to stop feeling what we're feeling, ignore what we're feeling, get past what we're feeling, grin and bear it. And that may feel like a lot of what college is supposed to be. Just, I got all this energy, I got all this strength, I got all this stamina, I'm going to use it all. And the people who are trying to encourage you to do mindfulness, not my favorite term, I like mind body better, but they've got your best interests in mind and body. And if you're becoming desperate, if you're losing faith that you can be quiet, you are a candidate for trying it and getting enormous benefits from all kinds of failure at it. Meaning any effort to do it can have an enormous impact right away, right? Because you're the test case. If you're already pretty cool, if you're already pretty calm, if you're already can bring your heart rate down, well, you could work on it and get better. But the person who can make the biggest strides is the person for whom it is the most difficult. So if you give it a try and it doesn't work, that's a sign there's so much in there for you. And if I were a student again, and in fact, I intend to be as soon as I graduate in May, that is what I would be trying to do, is not just trying to learn, but trying to figure out how I learn and what I can do to help myself learn.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Dana. And that brings us to the end of our episode. Thank you so much for monkeying around with us. Stay tuned for the next episode of the Monkey Mind Lab.